Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to a pro side first for FutureSox, an actual MLB tinged White Sox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge, and joining me this evening are Nick Murawski and D. Danny Miller. How you guys doing tonight?
Andy, go ahead, buddy.
Oh, well, I figured I'd leave that to you, but I'm doing well, man. To be honest with you, being that this is the first time that we are all three here together with Future Sox, super excited to get rolling and just extremely happy to be here, man. How you doing, Nick?
You said it. You said it perfectly. I mean, this is what a fun adventure this is going to be in a season that, let's be honest, is probably not going to give us a lot of great moments on the field. You never know. They could surprise us, but I think this is where we're going to have our fun. Having these types of conversations, and we've got some stuff to chop up here. How about that?
Indeed, we do.
Yeah. As I know that, in this off season, this is one of many huge announcements slash events that are happening. The White Sox announced that, well, actually, the White Sox didn't announce it. Somebody else announced it, that they were looking to figure out a place for a new stadium for the White Sox. And that area was deemed to be the 78 development, which is it's south of Roosevelt, west of Roosevelt, and west of Clark, and east of the river, and north of what is that? Pingtown Park.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So, I guess I'll open it up here and say, Nick, how do you feel about the decision, if it indeed does happen, that they move to that location?
I mean, as a lifelong diehard Sox fan, it's great that you're going to stay not only in Illinois but also on the south side of Chicago. I never ever believed that they were going to be going to Nashville or Portland or anywhere else, but I know that there's a lot of land in like areas of Tinley Park and other sections of the burbs outside of the city proper that maybe something could have gotten done. And here's an area that I think has been talked about for a long period of time, has been written about, and like what could be in terms of a stadium. Everybody loves the beautiful skylines, right? You're not a quality stadium, at least in the Major League Baseball world, if you don't have that backdrop, right? That's what everybody looks at. I'm speaking of like PNC Park, and there's so many others, right? That make sure that they have that going for them as an attraction. And this 78 building it, and if they could figure that out, which I don't see why not, you'd have that. You'd have that great Chicago skyline. What could be, right? The South Loop over there, again, 2 miles north of the Bridgeport area, but world of difference. All the possibilities. There's public transportation stops, restaurants, hotels. It's livelier. It's a completely different atmosphere. Uh, right now, I'm thinking this is a pipe dream. This is years and years down the road if it ever happens. Something interesting for us to kick around on a cold mid-January day when absolutely nothing has been happening. Meaty, for the Chicago White Sox as a team. This is a lot of sizzle, no steak. But again, when it's been gloomy, this is something I guess you can kind of warm up to and think, well, what could be down the road? And the fact that there's quote unquote serious talks, it gets everybody a little excited.
Serious. It's a very
Serious.
very good word that you point out there because every article written by one of the news outlets, one of the many news outlets that are covering this, every blogger, it's a quote that came out in the original article, I believe it was Chicago Sun Times, and and that word serious is taking hold everywhere. So yeah, that's, I mean, to me, like you say, it might be pipe dream, but the fact that the word serious is being tossed around out there means that people are at least out there doing their homework on this thing, right? This isn't just like, hey, we're looking at this site and we'll get back to you type of thing. There's definite homework being done. So to me, it's interesting, at least in that sense.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I have so many questions. Um, and as Nick, as you are, you've been around there for, driving through that area for work, and Danny, you got the friend who's got a boat down there on the docks. Um, One of the questions I have, and I know that a lot of Sox fans that we know tailgate in the parking lots. With the size of a ballpark, is there enough space there where they're going to have enough parking to be able to hold people, or are we looking at a lot less driving and a lot more public transportation?
Well, I think that would be what they're going to pitch is, almost forcing fans perhaps because of the lack of parking to utilize rideshare, public transportation, Union, LaSalle, Roosevelt, Red Line. Here are a bunch of different options. Um, on the weekends, I could see it being extremely difficult. I mean, heck, 7 o'clock, for a 6:40, 7 o'clock game, even during the week, it's tough.
You bring up the I mean, it's not necessarily obviously strictly a north side thing, but they bought that entire area around Wrigley and basically turned it into a pseudo kind of tailgating thing. But the thing that it does is generate money, because if the people show up there, they have to buy things. It's not like a tailgate where, people show up with their grills and are cooking their own food out in the parking lot and essentially taking Jerry's money from him. They are going to be forced to spend money somewhere. And people complain about, sports wise, they complain about the amount of money that it takes to bring a family of four to a baseball game, you know. So I can only imagine that, not necessarily that it's always, like a family thing, because we've seen how those parking lots get. But, you know, the
Indeed.
the ability to be able to do that as a family, that goes away, and the cost of attending said ball game goes up. So, as you were saying, Danny.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry, and I just have a couple of thoughts on this because and I'm sure you'll have something for us to look at here in a little bit, but there's been a handful of artist renderings of the area with the stadium on it. In one article, or actually a couple of articles, I saw that the stadium is intended to be as a baseball only venue. Somewhere else, though, I heard that there's talks of the possibility of the Chicago Fire playing there with their contract expiring with Soldier Field. But really, what I wanted to get at was, some of these buildings they're talking about adding, living space in the area, condos, apartments, things of that nature, high rises. Uh, you know, Nick brings up that even though you're kind of a little on the fringe of, the hustle and bustle of downtown, uh, but there is still quite a bit of activity in that area. There's bars and restaurants and universities nearby, and just a lot going on. If there's any kind of events going on in the city, traffic can be a little bit of an issue. But now add in all this living space on top of not just the sports complex that you're going to be putting in there, and just kind of trying to figure out how that works out. Because if you've been down Clark Street between south of Roosevelt, let's say, uh it's not exactly as if Clark Street's like a super wide, you know, throughway to drive down, right? And then you add in all the traffic that daily is back and forth on Roosevelt because it is one of the more well-traveled streets in that area. Uh, add all this stuff in there, and I think it can be a logistical nightmare. We talk about Soldier Field being bad, and Lakeshore Drive is wider than either one of these streets is, right? Uh, so kind of trying to force that public transportation thing on folks is going to be something that you're going to have to convince a lot of folks of, especially like we talked about pre-show. Some of your older folks, like Nick was saying, you're trying to get your parents to navigate, say
Oh,
you're 60, 70-year olds trying to get to navigate, a public transportation to go to out to a ball game might not be the best way to do this sort of thing.
yeah, and I think Danny, this brings up maybe slightly different avenue, but they might attract a different fan base. If this
Well, there
type of
you go.
stadium, if this type of stadium comes in, and you'd have to look at like PNC and Oracle Park and some of these other stadiums and, what that did to the neighborhood, what that did to the fan base. Did folks, longtime fans say, you know what, I am not getting into that hot mess. I am not driving into that thing. I might go once with some family and we'll try to navigate public transportation, or we'll go for the weekend and stay at a hotel and catch a game. You might get a completely different vibe. You might get more, folks that are, living in the city that have no problem navigating their way in or close to different public transportation lines. That's the thing, how this fan base looks could be completely different. I think the infrastructure, the how to get in, how to get out, they'll have to tackle that, or they might just say, "Hey, fans, figure it out. Like here's what the city wants. Here's what we want. Here is what is good for everybody in terms of making money." And people will show up. They will, but I'm looking at like PNC's attendances, and at the end of the day, it's like, what's your product like?
Right. Right.
And we'll I'm sure kick this around, but there are a lot of questions still. It's so damn early. I don't think at this current stage it solves any of the bigger issues, but the conversation of, well, this could be Jerry's parting gift for like maybe a future ownership group. Like, here you go. Look at what I've done. I didn't do any of the things I should have done as an owner. I didn't set up my team for success. I missed it. I dropped the ball so many times.
Right.
But here, look at what I did. I was able to
Here's my
get,
legacy now.
here. And I'm sorry, but that doesn't absolve him. It's
It
not like
absolutely does not.
I will not look at Jerry in a new light, being like, oh well, wow, he was able to figure out the '78, and he got the White Sox that park, and now the new ownership can do this. No, it's like you should have taken care of all this stuff a long time ago. So obviously, I've got some emotions and some feelings about some of this, and yeah, there's a lot of different ways to look at it.
I like it. So essentially, what you're telling me is that by them building this new stadium with the complications to transportation and the parking situation and all that, are we saying that by changing the fan base, essentially, just hear me out, you alienate your first fan base, so now you get a whole new one? I mean, just a thought there. Um,
Sorry, just had to point out I'm at heater number 1 now with Nick. Nick
little
pointing
bit.
out Jerry's legacy and how it was
That
not
triggered it.
going down the
That
way it
triggered
should.
it. All right, good to know.
So essentially, what you're telling me is when they do the 2024 White Sox Ring of Honor at Reinsdorf Stadium down there on the river, are you telling me that you are going to? Well, I mean, his widow won't be there, so we won't have that issue. But are you going to boo the dead man?
Um, I would boo him as like what he stood for. if that may, and I think I can compartmentalize it. I absolutely can. Like, I'm not like wishing for Jerry Reinsdorf to die so we as a fan base can get a new ownership group in that might, spend the right way, that might look at it differently, or might align their ways of doing things with what the fans want to see. I'm just looking for a new ownership. But I also feel like that the way that is going to happen is through him passing. Like, he has gone on record a couple months ago, like, I got nothing else in my life. I don't do anything else worth noting. This is what I do. I don't know if that's a good enough reason, but who am I? You're the one, your dime, your dance floor, Jerry. So go ahead, stick with the team. Look, there isn't a direct, like, just because we get a new stadium doesn't mean all of a sudden, especially if Jerry's still around, we're going to have a different product. Sure, by the time this thing actually gets completed, he very well could be gone and a new ownership takes over. There's no guarantee that they will operate the way we want, it to be operated. They might just look at, hey, we got people coming in because this is a hot place to be. We don't need to spend the money. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, that's why, it's, I look at, teams like the Pirates, going back to PNC, because it's being compared so much to PNC, and they're rated as one of the best stadiums. And I was there a few years ago, and it's beautiful walking in, the bridge, the Clemente Bridge, and the skyline, and there is so much in the area. Like, we just walked from our hotel, walked to PNC Park. There's a lot to do in the area. It's beautiful. But, after that shine goes away, where's the attendance at? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the Pirates have done anything worth noting, really. The Orioles haven't really done much with Oriole Park at Camden. Beautiful stadium,
Well, that's
Giants
when you go
probably
outside there. You generally want to get out of there as quickly as you can.
do. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I would say that this is probably a little bit more comparable to Busch in St. Louis than PNC, because PNC is like when you walk across that bridge, you get to the park. But to get to your other stuff, you got to walk across the park, as opposed to Busch, where they built that entire thing. I mean, they specifically built it all around around the stadium. Kind of, just like a little oasis in that in the middle of downtown St. Louis, where you can walk from hotels, but to get to the area, you still have to, make a little.
I've actually heard the comp to Atlanta as well.
Yes.
There's an entire complex built around the new stadium down there.
Yeah, but again, with that one, they went away from the city and built it out in the middle of. I mean, literally, like, I used to drive through that highway to get to Atlanta when I was out on the road, and you drive by it now, and it's just an exit on the freeway. I mean, it's out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, it's custom built around the park, and they built all that stuff around the park, but it's out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, not nowhere, but it's pretty far away. So, as you were saying,
I mean, I get I get the big picture. I do. Like, this could really be something magnificent for a new ownership group to inherit
if done
and take
right.
over.
Absolutely.
Of course, if done right. And there's a lot of ifs. I mean, there's so many, like, there's so many ifs and asterisks, and that's why, hey, this is fun to talk about right now. But guys, this. Other Sox fans know this. This is just a big distraction piece in my mind. I mean, ultimately,
It
like,
very well could be.
with what has not gone well with this team, this organization over the last year plus. We could probably even go longer. From a PR standpoint to just lack of player development, organizational stuff. Nothing is going right. Well, here we go. Look at this. Let's get people excited about something. Let's get them off of the idea that we have no right fielder. We're shoddy on second base. We really don't have a starting rotation, yet we think we probably can compete in the Central in 2024. So,
We're fortunate
you
to
know,
be in
I'm
the Central, I've heard.
yeah, exactly. But this is what we have, right? Like we're given these little like gifts as fans. Like here you go, have this, chew on this for a little while, dream about this, and that's all I'm going to do for you. So, I mean, I think there are going to be some people I believe in Bridgeport that will have no problem with the White Sox leaving. I'll say that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Go, but there's going to be a lot of, even though it's only 2 miles, north, there's going to be a lot of people just, how dare you? We have had roots here since 1900, 1901. And, it's going to hit that community. It really will.
Yeah, I'm sure the folks let's say just east of the railroad tracks where the current stadium is, between 35th and 39th, that little neighborhood there, are probably most of those folks are probably going to be uh a little less perturbed by the move. Some of those folks I'm sure would probably be upset about it. If you've ever been down those streets on game day, there's some of those folks that have their garage doors open. They've got all their Sox memorabilia out there. The
Yeah.
whole family's hanging out in the garage with the big screen TV. They got the bar built out there. But then there's the other folks, and I know this just personally because of working for a third party vendor that had a contract with the team years ago. There's a large contingent of that neighborhood that is just fed up with the crowds and a lot of the
Oh,
things that you hear
yeah.
about that team on the north side where you don't really hear those complaints on the south side, but they're there. People
They're
urinating
there.
on their
And
lawn and parking in places they
I
shouldn't
mean,
park, whether they've got a
look,
pass or not.
I lived, so I moved out of Bridgeport. I moved out of Bridgeport about 5 months ago. I was there for close to 3 years. I lived on 36th Street. To get to my seats, from my door into my seats, going through all the nonsense, 10 minutes. It was a 10-minute
Right.
walk from my front door into my seats. And I know so many people have those other stories. It's just a simple walk, and they've been doing that for decades. And they get together and they have parties and they tailgate at their homes, and then they walk over to the games. But I'll tell you, on Saturday nights and Friday nights, and there's a lot of traffic down Halstead, especially on Wallace. There's a lot of riffraff. There's a lot of nonsense at times. And I used to talk to different, folks in the neighborhood, and some of them were just absolutely fed up. Like I'm kind of done with it. They're like, I kind of liked COVID when there were no fans in the like in the ballparks. It was nice. It was quiet. We didn't have all the craziness going on. I mean, it's a neighborhood ballpark. People don't want to really think of it that way, but it is a neighborhood ballpark. And that'll change moving up north. There is definitely an identity. I know people that moved specifically to Bridgeport just to be close to that stadium, because they are diehards, and they're like, that's my dream. I just wanted to walk to the ballpark. I wanted to be in that iconic neighborhood. So yeah, it's all
And now you'll
glitzy,
have
it's
your
all
chance at a
glamour.
multi-million-dollar condo on
Yeah,
the same property as the
exactly.
stadium.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, right.
I got one thing to say to the people that live in the neighborhood that are tired of dealing with the crowds. The White Sox have been playing there longer than you've been living there. I don't care who you are.
This is correct. Right.
So either A, you inherited the house and moved into it, or you bought the house there. So either way, you knew that it was there, and you chose either to move there or to stay there, and that is 100% on you.
Now that is a valid point, and I should have talked to some more folks that were there for like generations, and what was the difference from old Comiskey, to the new ballpark, and did it change anything? Did it alter the street patterns, the path of folks migrating from kind of west where like Wings and Rings are, making their way east to the ballpark. How did things change? Did they see a difference? But I
Yeah.
totally get your
I
point.
mean, that's valid. But, I mean, you know, again, I mean, it was
Suck
literally
it up,
just across
Buttercup.
the street. So,
Right.
it's
That's
not
kind of
like
my thought.
anything could have changed that massively other than the fact that maybe if they've been there for generations, now more people have cars. But I will also say that, part of the problem there when you complain about the crowds is that people have changed and maybe there's less consideration, and it's not
Yes.
necessarily that they're
Good
fed
point.
up with living next to the ballpark. It's that they're fed up with people because people, let's not, eat
Yeah,
around
no,
the
world
I,
we
edge
live
of
in.
you,
regular
no,
garbage. So,
you're right there. You're absolutely right there with that thought. Times have changed.
Me.
Absolutely.
I'm people.
Yeah. I
I,
mean,
I am
you know,
basura.
I think also like, hey, Bridgeport is one of the few, in my personal, in my belief, one of the few great neighborhoods where you could still, you can get a single family home. You can have that feeling like you're in a quasi suburb, not really. Okay. You're still in Chicago, but you still have that, there are corner shops, there's parishes, there's schools, relatively safe. I hate to say that, because that's such a broad, relatively. There's a lot of areas in Chicago. There's a lot that are relatively safe. We get blasted a bunch of stuff about Chicago that you got to just take it with a grain of salt.
I mean,
But
Especially on the South Side. People that have never experienced the South Side tend to think that South Side is a war zone. And unfortunately, as somebody who grew up on the South Side, my entire young life, of course, I was a Midway kid, but still part of the South Side of Chicago. It's not a war torn everywhere. You know what I mean? There are certain pockets that, yeah, of course, you probably don't want to go into them if you're not familiar with them, but it's an unfortunate
underdeveloped pockets
designation.
scare people. I mean, like
Yeah.
when you've got stretches of like nothingness and boarded up homes and broken windows, and it doesn't look like anybody's paying attention to these areas, and you got to walk through them or under dicey overpasses that are probably deemed unsuitable. That is frightening, right? You want to see life, you want to see happening, you want to see shiny new stuff. You want to feel like there are eyes around this place, and there aren't stretches of desolate nothingness. And that's where I could see that cozy feeling of like, well, maybe this is gonna like this will breathe life into the area of the South Loop. Will the fans? Will all the fans come with it? That's the question.
I don't think that people are going to stop going to. I mean, obviously, the people right now that are fed up are not going to go at this particular point until the team shows them. But that is what that is. I'm going to go ahead and bring up a couple of these pictures because I did prepare them, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw them on the screen.
Yeah,
here.
it's
So here
check
is
it out.
the actual Google Maps here of that area of the 78. And it's just this big, huge hole right here in the in this map is the proposed place. And here is the drive. If you are not familiar, guaranteed rate is down on the bottom of this map, and the red dot up on the top is the corner of Roosevelt and Clark, which is where the proposed site is. Again, this could all be much ado about nothing because this could ultimately just be, some sort of a, tactic to soften up somebody to try and get, Jerry's trying to get somebody to give him some money for something, like he did with the other park. But I mean, ultimately we'll see. Here's bring up one of these mock-ups here. This is a mock-up of a northeast facing view out to the lake, and you can see a nice little water taxi down there in the river, and that's roughly the area where they're talking about building it. And from how wide it looks, if they put a park in there, there's going to be no place for lots over there. So
Well, unless you build a parking structure,
yeah, unless you build a parking structure.
which, just going back to that conversation really, really quickly here. We talked about the whole tailgating thing being a part of the identity of the South Side team right now. Just a thought, if you're going to do something like this, if you want to throw a parking structure in there and then maybe, make the very top level of that parking structure, a tailgating area, a
What could go
certain
wrong?
oh
I think
yeah,
that's
that's true. I
that's an
guess, but
outstanding idea,
sure.
Danny.
What's that?
I think it's an outstanding idea, Danny.
It'll look like
Well,
the federal building downtown, where it'll have giant fences at the top with razor wire on the top of it because they're worried about somebody jumping over the fence to plummet to their death. I'm just saying. I say you get a
for a
pontoon
home run
boat
ball
and just pull up. A pontoon party boat and just pull up in the river, and then you're good.
there you go. Well, like I said, buddy's got a refurbished 65-foot yacht about 2 blocks north of there, so that might be something that could happen in our future. But
Yeah.
and I was just thinking, if you take the proper precautions, maybe a certain money hungry ownership group could, rake in a pretty penny for premium spots for those top open area parking areas of a large parking structure. Just
Yeah.
a thought.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's going to be difficult. How about this? It's going to be it's definitely not going to be like guaranteed rate with all the parking around the outside.
Correct.
Even
Correct.
if they built a parking structure, to amass the kind of parking that you are going to need to fill a park like that you need to have available for a park like that. Um, that's going to have to be like a 20-story, 10-acre
Right. That's
garage structure, and I just don't.
It'll be fun leaving.
Oh, could you imagine? Ugh. I mean, people complain about the lots now, but if you get stuck on floor 20 of the parking garage, you're not leaving for 3.5 hours.
yeah, right. Hey, maybe I hadn't thought this through all that much, but was just
No,
throwing some
it's
stuff out there.
totally fine. Just
I mean, there are like satellite lots that I know are just open on Sundays for Bears tailgating. They're just odd little pockets in the South Loop area that are, you can park, during the day. They have opportunities to park, but on Sunday it's like, this is Bears parking, and that could pop up. You're going to have to get creative to replicate some of that. There's other
Yeah, the
opportunities.
thing
There's
about
other
that though is
land areas.
there actually are some areas just across the river that they might be able to use. I know, with the picture we're looking at right now shows the rail yards, but just north of there across the river, I know there's some industrial area that at least doesn't seem to be used. I don't know if it is or not, but you don't really see a lot of action over there sometimes. But going back to what you're saying about, Sundays in the Bears, this is Bears parking only. We're talking, Bears, that's 8 home games, maybe 9 home games a season, depending on the year. We're talking about 81 home games for the White
Sure.
Sox. I
Yeah.
don't know if that would typically work out, the same way it would for your Bears game day.
I mean, it's possible Jerry just
Yeah.
knocks down the rate and puts another parking lot there, and then just gets a bunch of buses to just shuttle everybody over to the new park. He's gonna get his
They
parking
could,
money.
you could essentially cover the rail yard across the river as well too.
Yeah. Well,
And
so
we've seen that done. I mean, over near Grant Park, there are big swaths of that rail yard that run behind Grant Park there, just what to the west of Grant Park, that are all covered and built upon. So just another thought.
yep. Here is another mock-up facing south down the river. So many happy people. You got some crew boats out there on the river. You got your water taxi. You got some kayakers. You know, looks everybody looks so happy.
Yeah. It must have been after a win.
Yes. So that's yeah.
Well, the current stadium deal is up in 2029. They've got 5 or 6 years or so to figure out the product on the field for this.
retool.
Yeah, this is it's fun to talk about the dream. And a lot of people have been dreaming about this, right? Ever since the new ballpark went up, just oh, you missed it. You missed the opportunity. To have the skyline, and you know, I've been hearing about it, and I know you guys have been hearing about it. What the stadium is right now, I think it's a fine stadium. I really do. There's plenty of opportunities to walk. There, the open concourse, the kids area. There's a lot of now the regulations. That's a whole different story. Not allowing 500 level to come down to 100. Not being able to get
The running
people
of said
into the
venue.
stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Especially
running
when
of
there's
it,
like 5,000 fans in attendance when they suck.
100%. But the actual structure, in comparison to a lot of stadiums that I've seen, it's not a bad stadium at
not.
all. What they have done with it since it opened in 1991 and all the different renovations. I mean, again, what troubles a lot of people is that it's out in a bunch of parking lots, the location, the neighborhood, the lack of life around the ballpark immediately, and the lack of the view. That's what a lot of fans that come from different stadiums or wherever, that's what they have the big problem with is just there's no skyline view. And that's the new thing. And I said, if you take that actual stadium that exists at 35th and Shields and you place it on lot 78, even though I know that's not how it's going to go, I think everybody would all of a sudden say, wow, look at this stadium. Look at this situation for the White Sox. Oh, my goodness. This is one of the top 10 stadiums in all of baseball. Like, all we did was just move it 2 miles north, and you've got your views now all of a sudden, and you've got your water area.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we hadn't done a major league podcast yet for Future Sox, so I wanted to get on here tonight since this was a prime opportunity to just kind of throw out some food for thought and hear some different feelings on the park. And I think we did that. I'm sure that some other interesting points will come up here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll get on here again, whether I'm with you guys or not. But we'll get this major league side of things happening here, and it's a lot of fun. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Ian. Yeah, this was great.
Yeah, it was really good to get in there, especially getting the opportunity to work with my new my new partner on the
Got
upcoming
it.
show that we'll be doing together. It was fantastic to sit down and talk with you tonight.
Yeah. So this will
Yeah.
be available on YouTube audio only, and we are posting this video as well. Future Sox Podcast. Go ahead and subscribe, and go ahead and give us a rating on there as well. Hopefully a good one. FutureSox.net. You can find all the written content, including a story that just came out today from Nick Murawski right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can follow us on the X at FutureSox at FutureSox. I am Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. Nick Murawski at Nick GGTB, and Danny Miller down on the end over there, whose nameplate I screwed up because that's his old, and he changed it since he moved over to Future Sox. Now it's Danny Miller FS instead of WSD. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen. And we thank you guys for your time. We appreciate it. You guys have a great night, and we will talk to you guys later. Thanks.